What's going on? It's August 16th, 2022. Still cranking away on RPG a day. So, for this day, what would be your perfect game? Now, that's a really hard question to kind of answer, but uh, I really am still going to kind of come back at it from the same way what I would recommend a good introductory RPG to be. It's a simple game. I know that's a pretty loaded term, but by simple, I just mean that it's easy to learn, it's easy to teach. It is a system that doesn't have every edge case attempt worked out within its pages. It's not some 500 page book that is just filled and filled and filled with endless amounts of pre-imagination that are done for someone. It's definitely a system that talks back. I'm not a huge fan of yes and no answers, and then you just come up with what goes on after that. I'm not very apologetic about saying that a lot of times people just really aren't creative all the time, and it's very difficult to be creative all the time without getting some kind of feedback. And if you've been going on through a game for quite a while and it's kind of dragging out and it starts to feel like a little bit of a slog, it's good to have a system that is designed to continuously interject more information back into the role-playing cycle. I'm also a big fan of a game that has meta currency, something that is a limited resource that forces players and GMs, much like in 2D20, to manage the creativity that they want to inject. A constant sense of uncontrollable invention makes for a game that can just run rampant a lot of times and get out of control and just balloon into something entirely that you weren't expecting. And sometimes that's fun, but sometimes it can be ridiculous and hard to dig yourself out of a hole. The guardrails, the constraints, and the rules and the guidelines all design something that supports the fiction actually being portrayed in the game itself. Again, there are games that want to define themselves as being able to support playing out a story, which again is kind of a loaded term, but those game systems are very often not designed with guidelines directly in them that support that type of play. It does go back to the Cops and Robber episodes where you are just inventing something and either getting approval from the one person who is running the game, so to speak, or trying to manage some kind of consensus. When there's actually meta currency being used and rules that support the concepts of what's played in the fiction of the game, its genre, whether that's horror, fantasy, science fiction, or whatever, it actually is encouraging you. So many people look at the idea of a rule book and say, well, this is all I can do, and you can't do much beyond that. And that's true if you're playing a board game. You really don't want to tinker with the rules too much. Role-playing games, being kind of a dynamic system into itself, allows for a lot more leeway. That doesn't mean that you should just run rampant over the rules and just start changing everything willy-nilly without thinking that something bad is going to happen. But if enough forethought has gone into it to where if you're playing a game that's exploration-based, there should be systems and guidelines set up that actually support doing exploration, not just simply saying, well, my character has the navigation skill. That's pretty low-hanging fruit. What happens when they succeed? What happens when they fail? What happens when there's ambiguous information? What happens when they're in different environments? There's all kinds of things that can be done to make a very simple game be interesting. If I was to try and say what comes close to the concepts of what would make a perfect game for me, It's the Mutant Year Zero engine. It's narrative dice, like Star Wars and Shadow the Beanstalk. It's powered by the Apocalypse, although not so laser focused in on a particular aspect of gameplay or having a particular social focus or theme focus. But the narrative cycle in PBTA, especially if we move into something like Ironsworn, which can be played solo and be played solo very easily and very well, as is demonstrated by Dice and Me, if I remember correctly, the name of the channel. And that's really what I would look for to be a perfect game for someone like me. Is it's got to talk back. It's got to be easy to learn, easy to teach, easy to get people involved in, uses a meta currency, and actually has rules that support what you are wanting to do in the game.